welcome back to What If History Restarted, episode 57. And last time we saw some stuff like over in Africa, such as that Sudanese country collapse, and some countries break off of Cambodia's control. And yeah. So this episode we're focusing more so over here in the Americas, where the Yucatan country continues to be kind of the leading power. One country that does not like that is this middle Mexican country. I'd say this one's just Mexico, probably. I mean, really, this is Mexico, but because I think Mexico City's somewhere here. But anyway, this country obviously feels pretty threatened since we have a major world power right on its border. And there's also, it's kind of almost like real world, like Colombia and stuff, because there's a lot of drug trafficking going in from this country over down to this one. So because of that, some of those it's not necessarily cartels, but some of those gangs and stuff, they kind of start to declare independence and be their own countries. They're mostly in the rural areas out like this. And yeah, let's make it a little bit more noticeable. So the Yucatan country is going to be okay, Mexico, you're dying here, so we're going to help stabilize you. I believe these are all the same religion, yeah. And Mexico is okay, please send us aid. So that's what Yucatan does. They start sending Mexico aid, and it kind of works, but not really. And Mexico kind of just ends up wasting a lot of it, and that makes Yucatan pretty angry. So they're going to ask for all that aid back, and Mexico's going to be forced to do it. But now they're extremely poor, and yeah, now these guys are resurging in power and being more powerful than they were before. So that's a bigger issue, and eventually, this one's too close in color to the other one. Eventually these guys become the real actual problem, with this one even going down here and attacking the city. So from here, Yucatan is going to take action, and if we do that, they're going to begin to push into these countries. Like this, yeah. Well, they're not really full-fledged countries, but they're almost there. So Yucatan does a pretty good job at this now. But Mexico's still a little damaged, and also Yucatan wants to have this under their temporary control, because they don't want those groups rising up again. So we are going to see that Yucatan is going to annex a decent amount of land here, but they're going to claim that it is just for peacekeeping and all that, and that they'll eventually give it back. Hold on, the border looks terrible right now. Let's just fix that slightly. So Mexico is kind of going to have to agree to that, even though they probably don't want to. Meanwhile, up here, this northern Mexican one is going to see this as a great opportunity, and they're just going to immediately invade down into this one, because their excuse is oh, we want to liberate their people, but in reality they just want land. So this goes pretty well until they come over to this coast, and then this Mexican country actually kind of starts pushing back, because I'm going to call this one Chihuahua. They have a lot less morale up here in terms of the invasion, because there's not a lot of reason to do this. These guys are defending their homeland. And hold on, probably doesn't go that far back, but yeah. So eventually they're going to agree for peace, and the Chihuahua country is going to get this amount of land. So yeah, this one got a little bit smaller now. Over here, this one, I have no idea what this area, it kind of goes up to Arizona, so we could just call it Arizona. So this Arizona and West Mexican country thing, it is a little bit scared of Chihuahua, because now they have kind of a rival here. And so there's obviously, like I just said, a lot of tensions escalating. And these guys are pretty afraid of each other. They don't want the other one to invade, and they're worried about the other one becoming too expansionist. So eventually, what we kind of see happen is, nope, they are both going to join one of these alliances. These guys are going to join up with this one. Well, I'm going to say that that Chihuahua will join the Pentagon Alliance because they probably don't like Louisiana. Which leaves these guys to join the 3-point star. Like so. And fine, I'll do it the proper way. There, now it's not weird looking. But yeah, both of them join alliances so that they can't invade each other. That's something. Up here we have the Canadian / prairie country. I guess it's really just the prairie country because it's not that far in Canada. And then we have the native reserves country, where all the native tribes were allowed to live. The Canadian people really don't like these people, or prairie people, whatever. They are like really, they don't like them, you know. Natives and, you know, people that descended from colonizers, you know, it's not a good mix. And they especially don't like it because even though, like, the majority of this country, as you can see, is the native people, there's still, like, if we look at the religion map here, there's still a lot of, you know, Europeans, descendants of Europeans that live in, like, this half of the country. Now, it's mostly just because, like, barely anyone lives here, so just the few people that do happen to be European. But still, Canada, I keep calling them Canada, they're, like, barely Canada. But whatever this thing is, they just don't like it. And yeah, they're gonna start invading into this country. But now there's a pretty big issue here because, well, this country is protected. It's supposed to be reserved for the natives. But the prairie country is gonna find sort of a loophole, which is that, you know, the tree about this place being protected says that it's protecting the native peoples and not necessarily the country itself, just the native people. So Canada, or the prairie country, is saying that they're just gonna take their own land. And so they do it, and now really this shouldn't be allowed, but, like, none of the other countries really want to get involved in war because they're all a little lazy. And yeah, so the prairie country's military rolls on in. Eventually they start to reach, like, the border between the majority groups. And from there, they're going to agree to peace with the native country government. So if we just look at the religion layer one last time, to get a good idea, we can drop a new border for this place, which is going to be something like this. Bam. So yeah, this country has now gained a decent amount of size by a pretty not nice manner, but they did do it. And yeah, these guys definitely look a little bit more like closer to their actual native part, ethnicity, whatever you want to call it. Very interesting map here. You know, just goes straight across the Gibraltar people. But anyway, turning just to the south, we now have the two Californias. Now this California right down here is like an economic powerhouse. This one right up here is not so much. They kind of suck in terms of economy and just overall power. And yeah, some of these people are pretty unhappy with how terribly they're doing in comparison to California. So a referendum is held, and this area down here agrees to join up with California, just because they want, you know, to live in a country with a way better economy. And this does actually go pretty successful for them. And so now we see that, inspired by this, in the next few years, there is some similar things happen as we have more areas agreeing to cede from the North Californian country. So basically, what's happening here is that the North California country's treaty has been way too free because it allows for any area to just break off whenever it wants if it successfully holds a referendum. So, yeah, that's why you don't have a bad treaty. And now we see that that starts happening in other places too. I don't. Let's see. Yep, see there. Oh wait, no, that's wrong there. No, there is not a Gibraltarian ethnic group minority over here, but we still see that this is going to happen more. Because, yeah, eventually this area also wants to break off, but at this point they're just like done with this country, so they don't even want to do their own thing. They just want to. They don't even want to join someone else. They just want to start their own new country. And we'll make them orangish. So yeah, North California has slightly collapsed here, not fully. It still is alive, but a lot smaller than it used to be. Kind of is more like Oregon now that I look at it. Like Oregon is like, I don't know, what is this? This is Oregon, isn't it? Okay, well, Oregon, we're calling it now. I still don't really know how you pronounce it, but we're gonna go with Oregon. And now what do we do? That was all I really had planned. We're gonna go down to this area down here. If you remember, a few episodes ago, there was a civil war, and this country broke off, and it's kind of, expansionist. Now, obviously, there's not really a lot it can expand into, only really this country, because this one's not going to go well if they invade it. Just look at the difference there. But they do have a slightly different idea, which is that they're going to expand peacefully by buying the Falklands. So, there we go. This guy's got a pretty good deal for it, so I'm sure they're happy. Who owns this island? Is that Korea? I think that's Korea. Yep, it is. Well, there's a lot of those little islands in real life that are randomly scattered across the world map and owned by, like, the Netherlands, so I guess that's kind of accurate. I'm gonna keep it. Anyway, though, back into this country, they have the Falklands now. I don't know how productive that's going to be for them, but it is something. They don't really know what else to do. They could, have a staged rebellion up here, but they're really not even strong enough to do that. So for now, they're just going to sit dormant, but they are waiting for any opportunity to expand, which may happen, who knows. Up here, the native country of Amazonian tribes is continuing to be a nuisance to all the surrounding countries, and these guys have already kind of learned their lesson about trying to invade it, but not all of them, because now the blue team's gonna go in. Hooray. These guys just decide to act out on their own. They think that, it was just the coalition that failed last time, but they can do better on their own. So they start pushing in and immediately get wiped out because this is not the type of terrain for, actual modern warfare. I mean, they don't get fully wiped out, but they reduce to like this. And yeah, things aren't too great. However, we are in the age of, airplanes and fire and napalm and all that. So with them deploying some very evil things, they start to actually do kind of decent. Eventually, it is halted around here, and the front line becomes eventually the border. So now being established like this. So yeah, definitely not good. They did just, commit war crimes, and they're going to get sanctioned for that, but not much else. Oh, that's the alliances. No wonder I was confused by the religion was on. But anyway, we are also going to see that the group up here, this country, well, first of all, let's reclaim this. Everyone up here that's not native has definitely wanted to move out, so that's not happening. But where these other countries have been, we're obviously going to see that there's been a lot of ethnic cleansing of these native tribes. Oops. We have that one, and then we have this one. And then we have, I believe we can, yeah, this one. So yeah, these guys are continuing to get smaller, which is sad. Probably shouldn't happen. And they're just existing. And it's still going really terribly for these guys with their horrendous border. Something's going to happen soon. I just said soon. Something's going to happen soon. And, I won't say what, but something. And just, what else could we do? Well, I guess we can always talk about this country again, because they have shown that they are expansionist, and that's not good. And some of these other countries are pretty scared about that, but these guys are all in alliances. So that only leaves, well, the native country, but they're actually, fully protected now. Everyone has, actually put their foot down. There's gold to California, but honestly, that war's probably going to be too hard for these guys to fight, considering how far away it is, and how much nothingness they have to go through. There's this country, but they're too small to really bother, and also too far. So they kind of just leaves, what are these guys called? Alaska, that's it. And this Canadian country. Now, Alaska is actually decently powerful. They have Siberia for some reason. So they probably wouldn't go for them. But the Canadian country over here is definitely a little bit weaker. As you can see, these guys aren't landlocked. But if they had just a little bit more land up here, they could technically be unlandlocked. So the Canadian country up here is definitely very worried about that. The only issue is that they have definitely sworn neutrality by now, so they do not want to join either alliance down here. But maybe they should, because these guys are eyeing them up now. So we see that the Canadian / New England country, because that's actually where most of their population is, but these guys are going to set up a lot of military bases along here. And the prairie country is just like, whoa, what are you doing that for? We weren't going to do anything. Obviously, no one buys it, but they can't really prove otherwise. But the prairie country does the same thing and builds a lot of forts here, both military bases. I forget we're in the 30s or 40s. We're in modern-ish times, so military bases. So yeah, this border is now very heavily secured. And over here, this country has this terrible little panhandle, and they're going to sell it because they like money, and there's literally nothing out here and has no purpose. So they're just going to sell it over to, that looks terrible, but they're just going to sell most of it over to this country, the new orange one, because they don't, like I just said, it's just extra money. And they knew that these guys were desperate for new land, because, they were tiny. Now, the only issue with this, though, is that now the bluish thing here, out in the middle of nowhere, has lost all their connection up with California by direct land access. So now they have to go through, rivers and all that, and that's annoying. So this country probably, might have actually been the one who benefited the most here, because now these guys have a new problem, which is that California is trading with them a lot less, but yeah. And anyway, with that, I do think that this is the end.